presented with the law of identity. This concept of the law of identity basically is explaining that two separate objects cannot be identical unless we're talking about aspects. That is to say, the second object is identical to the first object if the second object is an aspect, a lesser form of the first object.
Is the Father God?
Yes.
Okay, is Jesus God?
Yes.
All right, is Jesus the Father?
No.
Okay, if the Father is God and Jesus is God, and we can't collapse them into one, how is that not two gods?
In the same way, in Genesis chapter 5, verse 1 and 2, where God made male and female, in the day he created them, he called them Adam. How can the female be called Adam and the male be called Adam, which is a singular name, but used for two distinct persons? How can that be? Well, because they share in that what? Same nature.
All right, how many humans is Adam and Eve?
Two.
Two. How many gods is Jesus and the Father?
One.
Exactly. So Jesus.
Hold on 1 second. I'm going to answer the question. Hold on. So with that being said, Adam and Eve are two beings distinct from one another. However, they share the one name, but God, being unlike anything in creation, shares in that one undivided name, which is Yahweh.
Back to you, Mike.
Okay, all right, okay. Folks, if the Father is God and Jesus is God, and they're not each other, how is that only one God? He says, well, they share a nature like Adam and Eve are called one. It was you who compared Adam and Eve to the nature of God.
In the same way, in Genesis chapter 5, verse 1 and 2, where God made male and female.
How dare you sit here and say I'm doing that? You did that.
You have a question?
Okay. So, folks, I asked, okay, how many humans is Adam and Eve? Two. But Jesus and the Father are not two gods. So let the record show Adam and Eve are not one.
How about the law of identity? This one's the easiest. This one's the fun one I always laugh at because it is so incredibly simple. But you have A equals A. Boy, that's how profound philosophers can get sometimes. Did you know A equals A? Like I said, it sounds so profound. It sounds smart, but it's just simple. A equals A. Whatever we're talking about is identical to that which we are talking about. Any proposition is equal to itself. These are the types of things we have already defined as foundational to knowledge. These are the things that modernists take and say we have to have this.
What do we mean when we say that two things are identical? And can two different objects be exactly the same? Hello everyone, and welcome to the Sound and Sophia channel. Today we will be discussing Leibniz's law, or as it's frequently called, the identity of indiscernibles. As you may realize, this principle of Leibniz's law was first proposed by Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz in his Discourse on Metaphysics, section 9. that every individual substance expresses the whole universe in its own manner, and that in its full concept is included all its experiences together with all the attendant circumstances and the whole sequence of exterior events. There follow from these considerations several noticeable paradoxes. Among others, that it is not true that two substances may be exactly alike and differ only numerically. If we were to formulate this principle, it would look something like this. And if you can't read these nerdy odd symbols, it translates to: if for every property f, object x has f, if and only if object y has f, then x is identical to y. Or an easier way to explain it is, if x is identical to y, then everything that is true about x is also true about y, or is about self-identity. For instance, if we talk about the author of Alice in Wonderland, Charles Dodgson, who wrote under the pseudonym Lewis Carroll, everything that is true about Charles Dodgson is also true about Lewis Carroll. You cannot find a proposition which is false about Lewis Carroll and true about Charles Dodgson. Leibniz's law is a very important tool in our philosophizing. We humans tend to make up several different words that refer to the same object. So in order for us to figure out if two words is actually referring to exactly one object, this principle is quite handy. I think you do realize why this principle is so important. For instance, when we discuss the issue of persistence through time. When I was a child, I was a very smart young person, but now I'm old and stupid. So me as a child, according to the principle of identity of indiscernibles, are not identical. But wouldn't we want to say that I am identical to my past self? What do you guys think?